The first person up to talk with you this afternoon is Stuart Luke, the Greens candidate for Glasshouse. Please make him very welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming along. It's fantastic to see this many people here, particularly given the weather. So you've all braved rain and floods and things to get here. Fantastic, thank you. We're very, very excited to have this launch here today. Very excited to have this many people here together. There's also somebody else here who's yet to be endorsed. So we've got yet another candidate in the room, which is fantastic. And we're very, very pleased to have Senator Larissa Waters and Adam Stone, who have both come up from Brisbane to be here today. So I'd like to hand over to Larissa to talk to you today, and then we'll get a chance to talk to you a bit more with the candidates. Thank you.
Senator.
I've got so many to choose from. Look, thank you so much everyone for being here today. It's such a great pleasure to be here to launch 6 fantastic candidates for what will be the best election campaign yet on the Sunshine Coast. Every election, more and more Queenslanders vote Green, and we know why. It's because we've got the ideas for a long-term sustainable future. We've got the heart, we've got the vision, and we've got the values. So more and more we see the vote. So I'm so proud to be here to launch the campaigns of Stuart Luke for Glasshouse, and there's so many of them I have to check my list. Gabrielle for Kawana, Alan Mackay for Caloundra, Sue Etheridge for Budrum, Rainey Skinner for Maroochydore, and of course John Law for Nicklin. So thank you all for putting your hats in the ring. It's just so important that we give people the choice to vote Green. We need that choice because the two big parties, unfortunately, are so close together on so many of the issues that really count. And we just desperately need to give Queenslanders that choice for a long-term vision and a sustainable approach to our planet, but also to our economy. So, of course, there's going to be lots of issues that we're speaking about in the campaign, and, of course, lots of local issues that will come up. But I guess across the state, some of the key things that we'll be talking about are a sustainable and diverse economy. Now, of course, we've seen the big parties try to put all of our eggs into the one basket, the mining basket, and forgetting about the damage that the mining boom is doing to our other industries like sustainable tourism and, of course, agriculture. And the best example of that is coal seam gas. The rush that we're seeing of coal seam gas wells going in on our best food producing land that we don't have a lot of in Queensland. It's precious and it's rare, and we need to make sure that it's kept to grow food for us and for the world. And unfortunately, both of the big parties are saying big green light to coal seam gas under the spurious notion that it's somehow going to be better for the climate. Well, it's still a fossil fuel, and we are still the sunshine state. So we think renewable energy is the way to go, and protecting our food producing land. And of course our reef. So we're seeing a trebling of shipping as a result, a planned trebling of shipping as a result of coal seam gas and coal exports. And you know, our reef is just too precious to risk. When we've got 65 Melbourne cricket grounds worth of dredging for new export ports for fossil fuels, something's gone terribly wrong. In a World Heritage area, that's not what you do World Heritage in our books. So it's really great to be able to be in the federal parliament and put those views and have put those motions and have bills to try and fix all of that for Queensland. But there's just so much here in Queensland that needs that green perspective. We need some Greens in the state parliament as well. So I'll be getting around the state and trying to support our candidates as much as possible. And it's really wonderful to have Adam Stone here. He's our candidate for Mount Cootha, which is of course an inner city seat in Brisbane. Traditionally we do very well in Mount Cootha, so I guess it's not too overstating it too much to say that Adam is our best hope for the state election of actually having an MP sitting in that parliament. There's no pressure or anything else. So, look, without further ado, I might throw to Adam just to outline some of the key things that he'll be speaking about, again, as he gets around the state and also in Mount Cootha. And then we've got the great pleasure of hearing from each of our candidates. I think we're just going to hear a little bit, but we just want to give everyone a flavour of some of the local issues and what it is that you want to bring to your electorates and why people should vote for you and vote Green. So that'll be wonderful to hear. And we'll take some questions from the media. Charles, if you've got any other folk here who want to ask us anything, very happy to oblige. And then I think we can all have a cup of tea. And those of us who need to brave the flooded roads to get back down to Brisbane for other meetings will try to do so. Carpooling, of course. and hopefully everyone else can stick around and have yet more cups of tea. So look, thanks for being here, everyone. I should have acknowledged the traditional owners at the outset. Of course, we always do that, and particularly given yesterday was Australia Day, also known as Invasion Day, it's important to remember our past, and how we deal with our past shapes our future. So we acknowledge and respect the elders that have been and that are still here, and their continuing culture. So on that note, I might throw to Adam Stone, our candidate for Mount Cootha, to say a few words.
Thank you for inviting me up here today. It's a real pleasure to be up here and seeing another fine batch of candidates being launched into the fray. I think it's quite a happy time to be a Green, really, and particularly to be a Green candidate. I think our star is rising across the country. We've seen our party go from strength to strength. We're represented in all state parliaments except for Queensland, and we're only a couple of months out from being represented in Queensland. And we're obviously, we're obviously kicking some real goals in the federal parliament as well. We're the fastest growing political party in the country. And I think, I really get the sense as I've been campaigning that there's a lot of disillusionment with the quality of politics in our state and in our country, and with the calibre of politicians. That people don't have a lot of confidence or trust in them anymore. And I think it's a real strength of the Greens brand that we're always upfront about what we believe. Anybody can find out what we think. They can ask us and we'll tell them, and we'll stay true to what we say. So I think that's a real strength that will set us up well for the future, and really improve our chances of finally getting some representation in Queensland. And I think it's more imperative than ever that we do get some representation in Queensland, because there's a whole host of issues, and Larissa just touched on a bunch of them, that are facing Queensland, where I think we're uniquely placed to bring a more sincere and long-term perspective to offering up some solutions. And some of the main ones that Larissa touched on is that the narrowing of our economic base that's been happening for quite some time, and it seems to be the economic vision of both of the old parties is that the resources sector should have primacy over all of these other diverse sectors of our economy that are central to our way of life and that have employed thousands of Queenslanders and can continue to do so if we manage them in a balanced and sustainable way. And I don't know who but the Greens could bring that perspective to our state parliaments and ensure that there is greater balance. The coal seam gas threat we know well. There's all sorts of untested risks there to our prime agricultural land and our underground aquifers and our food producing regions. One issue that gets raised a lot and is obviously on the minds of a lot of people in Queensland is the state of the health system. And there again, I think we're uniquely placed to offer some long-term perspective. We've got this overly hospital-centric health system. What we need to do is start shifting our focus a bit more to preventative health promotion, keep people well, keep them out of hospital, try to reduce the long-term burden of chronic disease that will make our health system unsustainable. But this is a long-term strategy. We need to be willing to invest now and not see payoffs for another sort of 12 or 15 years before we start seeing the fruits of that kind of approach. So you need a long-term perspective. You need a long-term perspective in your parliament if you're going to start achieving some of those results. I've touched on integrity. I think that'll be a big one for us throughout this campaign. I think the way that we conduct ourselves in public always shouts integrity. I always feel really proud by the way our candidates and our party members conduct themselves. And I think we would bring that ethos into the parliament and promote some reforms that will see greater accountability and transparency and integrity in a parliamentary system that really isn't set up very well for it, given that we've only got the one House of Parliament, we've got no Senate. On current polling, it looks like the LNP are going to storm it in, so we're going to have one old party with an overwhelming majority in the single House of Parliament. It's very hard to get some serious accountability and a diversity of views in that kind of context. But I think if we have Greens in there, we will try to bring that, we'll ask the hard questions, and we'll promote reforms such as the depoliticising of the public service, for example, that would be of benefit to all of us.
Both Larissa and Adam have touched on things that I was going to talk about as well.
Sorry.
And I think that's great, because it just automatically explains something that really draws me to the Greens, that integrity is the presence of how you conduct yourselves in the public, integrity in how we conduct ourselves amongst ourselves, how we organise ourselves to discuss and to put goals forward, how we negotiate how those goals are going to be achieved and the strategies. But integrity also, of course, comes from integral, the cohesion. And what I like here is that supporters and members of branches on the ground and the people that are putting themselves forward to be in state parliament and from the rural and regional areas, from the inner city areas, and then of course we have got representation in the federal parliament. That's cohesion, and everybody's working together. That's an integrity that I don't think exists with the other parties. Yeah. And so what else I'd like to say is about the candidates, both sides here, including myself, is that we come from diverse backgrounds, and I think those diverse backgrounds will inform how we approach the different issues on the Sunshine Coast. So we have people with health background, people in the arts, people in communications, small business, public service, teaching, we're all here. So all of that life experience is going to come in and inform how we address real life experience, how we address different issues on the Sunshine Coast. Those issues on the Sunshine Coast are real, and they need real solutions and real ways of addressing them, but they're also reflected in the Greater Queensland area. So what we do here, other people in Greens parties around Queensland are also addressing those issues in similar ways. So there's a cohesion of how we're doing this. And that's what I'm really, really excited about with this election, that people will see that. People will find out that it's not just kind of some ad hoc response to this, response to that. There's a real cohesion of people coming together to work for a better future for us all. So on that note, I'd like to hand it back to Larissa, and thank you very much. We'll hear more from us in a moment. And Larissa, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Some really inspirational speeches from two outstanding candidates, and many more to hear from. At this point, we were hoping the room would be packed with TV cameras and there'd be journalists thrusting microphones at us, asking us questions. So, Charles, would you like to do us the honour of asking a few curly questions for any one of us before we kick off and hear from each of our other candidates?
We'll see how we go, whether or not they're curly or not. You've spoken about some rather big issues, things like coal seam gas and the use of agricultural land and things like that, and the health system. There's a lot of people on the Sunshine Coast doing it very tough economically at the moment, cost of living pressures, things like that. Those other things tend to be large, long-term sort of things. Are there specific things that you've got in mind to help people out immediately?
Yeah, look, there are, Charles, and I think you're right. Cost of living is a pressure that we all face, and that's not just peculiar to the Sunshine Coast region or to Queensland. A lot of people around the country are facing rising cost of living, and I think a lot of that does link back to the two-speed economy that's being driven by the mining boom. And I think it's really important that with our broad policy levers, we make sure that we've got that diverse economy that's not driving winners in the mining sector, people getting great big salaries, forcing up the cost of living for everyone else, and then much of that profits and proceeds from that mining heading offshore because most of the companies are foreign owned anyway. So I think we both need on-ground policies to help people in their day-to-day lives, and certainly with the energy efficiency initiatives that we've got, that will help people keep their bills down. But we also need politicians who are willing to focus on those long-term policy levers and make sure that our economy is fair for everyone, and that it's an economy that's not damaging our planet and our environment, that supports us all in the long term, because that will end up costing us all far more. So we need, again, it's that focus not just on short-term economic profit for some, but it's a look at the long term, what's going to benefit everyone and the planet that supports us. So I don't know if Adam or Stuart wanted to have anything further to say about that. Not getting any signals there, but I think cost of living is something that certainly we're really conscious of, and particularly when it comes to rising bills, that's where we need that investment in renewable energy infrastructure, because we're hearing sometimes people are saying, my bills are going up because of the carbon price. Well, it hasn't started yet. Your bills aren't going up because of that. They're going up because those private energy providers haven't invested in the infrastructure that they should have. That's what is driving costs up. So what we want to see is investment in renewable energy infrastructure, those retrofitting for energy efficiency in homes, to make sure that people can not only keep their greenhouse gas emissions down and do their bit as they want to for climate change, but keep their bills down too. And there's things like feed-in tariffs that we're working on federally to try and make people, allow people to make a bit more money from making that upfront investment in putting a solar panel on your roof. So there's various things that we're doing at the federal level, and we just love the opportunity to do those at the state level too. So that was a good question. Thank you. That fits into the category of curly. Thanks, Charles.
Not wanting to steal the thunder of any of the individual candidates here, have you identified any of the key big ticket local items that you think are going to get traction within this campaign?
Look, I might actually ask Stuart to answer that as a well-connected local. I'm a blow-in from Brisbane. We only just got here in the flooded road, so...
Sure. I think the main things that we've identified, excuse me, as Larissa said, issues that we do see across the rest of Queensland, but particularly here on the Sunshine Coast. For instance, our health system, our hospital's been promised to us for years and years and years, and it keeps being put off and put off and put off. And as Adam said, it is a very, very vital part of a constructive health system, but it's the end product people go to when they're sick. The other thing we need to do, of course, is health education, preventative health. And part of that is either public health measures, preventative health measures as a public sphere, or in schools. Of course, that's always a good way to get education measures out. So health is very important here. At the moment, you've got to travel an awful long way to get to a public hospital. And in these conditions, that's not going to happen real quickly. And tied into that, of course, is public transport. Public transport on the Sunshine Coast. Again, we've been promised for years and years a rail corridor down here to the coast, up and down the coast, and then back to the main rail line. Hasn't happened, keeps getting put off. Last thing I heard, 2031. You know, I could walk the distance in that time. So those things tie in together. It's not just one issue or another issue. Everything complements another. And I think those two particularly will help with the cost of living issues too. Absolutely, they all tie in together. But the planning is what is really important. So yes, we want a rail system, but to make that rail system effective, you've got to support it because of the area with bus networks, or a light rail system is also being proposed for the area. So it's an integrated, complex set of issues that feed into any one major issue.
The Glass House, the response to a great question.
The final one, I hope this one might be a little bit curlier. Do you have a strange ally in Bob Abbott when it comes to
That would be strange.
when it comes to coal seam gas?
Yeah, look, we really welcome the support from Katter's Australia Party on our position on coal seam gas. It'd be nice if the big parties started taking a better approach on that too. Unfortunately, that's probably the only point of agreement that we've got with Bob Katter's party. But again, I think in a two-party system, it's really important that people have a choice of who to vote for. So we welcome anyone who's bold enough to put themselves forward for election, not just our Greens candidate, but anyone who's willing to say, hey, I'm not from one of the two big parties, but I still deserve your vote. That's good for democracy. And again, if we can see some results on coal seam gas, we will work with whoever is willing to work with us on coal seam gas to get a better outcome. But yeah, a bit concerned about some of Katter Australia Party's other policies, so we'll diverge from them on those issues, but we welcome their presence.
Right. But just talking, given the fact that on so many other things that you do, there is a divergence of views about things, what's it saying about the conservative side of politics if you align Bob Katter's conservative side of politics that he's coming out so vehemently against coal seam gas?
Look, I think it's saying that the big parties are out of touch with the community and that they've stopped listening to what people actually want for their future and the future of their kids. And for a long time now, people in the bush have unfortunately started to realise that the old parties aren't speaking for them anymore. And more, as we get out there campaigning in the regions, as we have been doing for many years now, but in recent years on coal seam gas, people are really pleased that actually what we're saying and what we're hearing from them are one and the same. And I think more and more we'll see in the regions a groundswell for the Greens. And coal seam gas is just the latest example of that. Food security more generally, breaking the back of the two-party supermarket duopoly that sees farm prices at the gate minuscule and yet massive profits going to the corporate giants. I think there's any number of issues really where the Greens are speaking to rural communities, and we want to make sure that they've got a long-term sustainable future and that we've got a healthy and diverse country from the cities all the way out to the bush. It's been lovely to have you here. You're very welcome to stay if you want to hear from our other fantastic candidates. I think we are going to have a quick intro from Jenny Fitzgibbon, one of our fantastic former candidates. And then, yeah, so you're welcome to stay, Charles. We'll hear from each of our great candidates, and then I think we're going to have a cup of tea. Thanks. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks very much. So, the great 6 candidates who are here to stand for the greater South East Queensland area. And the first up today is our candidate for Buderim. And Sue Etheridge is a hard worker for a fair, sustainable future and effective health policy. Please welcome Sue Etheridge.
Thanks, Jenny. Well, because of the slight change in procedures today, I probably will be touching on things that have already been mentioned, but I'm sure that's fine. Just briefly a little bit about myself. I've lived on the coast here for most of my life. I love the place. I think it's the best place in Queensland to live. So it's not surprising that lots and lots of people want to come and live here. I've been asked to speak briefly about the Greens' health commitments, and as I said, we've already touched on a few of these issues, but I'll repeat them so you can't forget them. The Sunshine Coast now has quite a diverse population mix. There's older retirees, sea changers as we tend to call them, along with young families with children. I think I'm probably somewhere in the middle. The Greens believe the state health system must be fair, publicly owned, and equally benefit all Queenslanders wherever we may live. The Greens have a strong focus, and Adam's already very, very strongly mentioned this, on keeping people out of hospital, and that is stopping them from getting sick. Education, prevention and early identification of health problems protects our quality of life, and in the long term is the most tax-effective way to spend our health dollars. For instance, did you know that poor dental health or poor oral health is the biggest cause of preventable acute hospital admissions? It's amazing. I actually had first-hand experience with this. My sister-in-law spent 4 years in the health system trying to find out what was wrong with her, only to have a dentist diagnose that she had mercury poisoning from amalgam filling. So 4 years. It's just amazing. We all know emergency department staff have a huge workload. The Greens are committed to expanding local access to general health care, including having 24-hour GP clinics at all regional hospitals to ease the burden on these emergency departments and their staff. The Greens are also committed to working towards establishing 24-hour mental health services throughout all of Queensland. And of course, and Stuart has mentioned this as well, we are committed to making sure that the new hospital at Kawana is not sidelined yet again. Affordable and accessible healthcare for all Queenslanders is a priority. I'd just like to finish with the well-known quote from Mahatma Gandhi that I'm sure you all know. It's something that I aspire to. We must be the change that we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Up next is our candidate for Caloundra. Alan Mackay is a quiet-spoken hurricane for environment-focused and community-centred development. Please welcome Alan.
Don't know about a hurricane, but I've been in a couple that are not nice. I really like talking about the big issues, and I would have loved to have talked about coal seam gas and the Great Barrier Reef today. But I'm going to talk about another thing that I really love talking about, and it's Pumicestone Passage. We live in a beautiful part of southeast Queensland, and Pumicestone Passage is one of the beautiful parts of southeast Queensland. The other thing that staggers me about southeast Queensland is that it has 24,000 kilometres of waterways. The cost of building 10 kilometres of highway could look after 24,000 kilometres of waterways for Queensland. Pumicestone Passage is a unique and beautiful area, an internationally recognised Ramsar wetland It's a haven for migratory birds. Old records talk about 300 dugong being seen together at the southern end of Palmerston Passage. It's southeast Queensland's prime fish breeding area. Inappropriate land use, inappropriate development, inappropriate maintenance of our waterways, inappropriate farming has all had an adverse impact on the Palmerston Passage and southeast Queensland waterways generally. So now is the time to stop the degradation, and now is the time to start the rehabilitation. The specialist knowledge and skills to restore our waterways are readily available and accessible in southeast Queensland. What we need is an action plan and a management plan. A catchment action plan is currently being prepared by local community groups with the support of local councils, with the support of water specialists, with the support of farmers, with the support of users of Palmerston Passage, recreational water users. We've started to gather together to form an action plan to clean up Palmerston Passage. What we are going to do is support those people who have the expertise and who have the knowledge, and this community group that has shown such initiative in getting together. They've got to make sure they have the resources to keep Palmerston Passage healthy. All it takes is the will and 10 kilometres of highway, and our children and our grandchildren will have a sustainable future.
Thank you, Alan. Now you have heard from Stuart Luke before, but Stuart will come up and talk again. He's an energetic and extremely capable communicator and community worker. And he's standing for Glasshouse. Stuart Luke.
Hi, thank you. I'll be very brief. You've heard from me a little bit already. What I really would like to reiterate is the fundamental beliefs of the Greens and how they feed into how we energise ourselves, how we negotiate amongst ourselves what it is that needs to be done, the strategies by which that is to happen, and eventually to control the outcomes, so that to make sure that there's a sustainable, good outcome for not just for us, but for people of the future. I have a passion to try and get word out about the coal seam gas industry and the complexity of that issue. Coal seam gas really is a really dead-end street. The investment is a dead-end street. It's going to run out. It's a fossil fuel. So building railway lines from here to ports, dredging ports, in 20, 30 years, and then what? We've got all this extraordinary stuff to clean up. The complexity of the issue is people are demanding it because they're saying we need this energy right now. We do need to find long-term solutions to energy security, but there are alternatives. And what I think part of the Greens options, part of the Greens education is to get the message out there that there are existing options today in the world. People have built solar thermal plants in Spain that power hundreds of thousands of people's homes. It exists. You can go and almost buy it off the shelf and just stick it in a paddock. It's there, folks. And that's what I think we need to do. We need to get that message out that you don't have to rely on what the big parties are feeding you. I'll finish off with just something that I read before, so I'll read it. I think the Greens start with a fundamental understanding that people need to look after the planet so that the planet is given a fair chance to look after us. We start with fundamental belief that people can help each other, and that is both a responsibility and a joy that we should all share. So on working in different issues in the different electorates that we represent, we're also working in the spirit of caring for our environment and our communities with an eye on the big picture of Queensland and guided by great Greens ideals. Thank you.
Everyone here here today is making me feel extremely proud. So our next speaker is from Kawana, and Gabrielle Roberts is passionate about the development of infrastructure appropriate to the building of strong community. Please welcome Gabrielle.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was told rain is out my forehead, so we'll do that. Thank you for coming on such a terrible day. Well, not as bad as the last few, probably. I'm talking about transport, I guess, and smart transport infrastructure is integral to our environmental, social and economic well-being. As Jenny just said, I'm passionate about building strong, vibrant communities. And to achieve this, it is essential to have appropriate infrastructure in place. On the Sunshine Coast, we're still waiting for this to happen. So many promises have been made over the years, so many broken. When I attended a transport forum last year, overriding concern of over 200 people there was about having a good transport service now. They were interested in light rail, which is light years away, but they wanted the rail system from Beburrum, I'm a southerner, to Nambour, which is achievable, and they wanted that now. So what I'm talking about is public transport that is affordable, not the third or fourth most expensive service in the world, which it has become since the increase recently. A service which is reliable, it runs to schedule, has a decent timetable, and a service which is efficient and functional. Now, it was brought to my attention that there's no toilets on the trains. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, a mother with young children, we've got an ageing population. So what are we trying to do? Keep these people at home, or are we trying to assist this? It's mind-blowing. Also a prominent feature of the Greens is their long-term planning and a realistic vision for the future. My emphasis on realistic vision for the future. And this is why the Greens are committed to extending and increasing the level of service in South East Queensland urban rail network. Creating new public transport routes that link major suburban destinations outside Brisbane CBD area. Avoiding the need for people to go into the CBD simply to change service and then head back out again. So, as well as easing congestion in the CBD and on the commuter system, it is saving commuters valuable time. Another initiative is introducing feeder bus routes for train lines with a particular focus on connecting communities to their local train, bus interchanges and shopping centres. I see these as wonderful initiatives, which I am committed to, that will ensure long-term sustainable infrastructure well into the future. It's something which everyone that has spoken already has spoken to today. Thank you.
And our penultimate candidate today is from Maroochydore. As you'll see from her talk, Rainey Skinner is committed to a creative path to realistic development. Please welcome Rainey.
Thank you. As an actor, this is a very new role for me, so I've got my script, so I'm okay, I hope. Hello, my name's Rainey Skinner. I'm the Queensland Greens candidate for Maroochydore. Delighted and surprised to be that. Delighted because I'm so chuffed to be taking part in this great machinery called democracy. Surprised because them suddenly became me. And I'm thinking, whoa, what have I done? But I'm looking around and seeing some wonderful, supportive, loving faces and thinking, thank you. I grew up on the Sunshine Coast. I love it here. Had a gorgeous, carefree life on the Sunshine Coast. Left to study at university in Brisbane. Left Brisbane to follow an acting and teaching communication course in Sydney. But 16 years ago, I came home to raise my children. I came home. So that was a great decision. I'm very happy to be here. It feels like home. I was speaking to one of my Greens colleagues or comrades, I'm not sure which yet, the protocol, the other evening, and we're talking about Maroochydore and the township of Maroochydore, and the reflection was that Maroochydore lacked a heart. And on thinking about that, I thought, yes, geographically and aesthetically, perhaps it does. But on Tuesday night, my backyard was flooding. And before I had had time to put down the phone after sending out a distress call, I had 8 friends and neighbours there with buckets and mops and hoses and a magic pump and magic bottles of red wine. And I thought, whoa, we've got a Maroochydore party. And it felt like a heartbeat. And on reflection, I thought to myself, that's what makes the community a heartbeat. And I think that's why I joined the Greens, because, well, I know that's why I joined the Greens, because I wanted to connect to their heartbeat. And I think you build a community from the ground up by listening and acting with integrity. And I feel very proud of all of my colleagues here today. I feel that's what I'm hearing, the notion of integrity. And I feel that you build a community and a neighbourhood by participating, by lending a hand. And the personal becomes political, and the political becomes personal. And I think these are thrilling times. People are finding their voice. Farmers are refusing to be railroaded by big corporations. They're locking the gate and opening their mouths. And how marvellous is that? The commonwealth of humanity can no longer be silenced. So we can add our voices to the bold initiatives of the Greens as they tackle the big issues like climate change, carbon tax, green jobs, green power, Denticare, high-speed rail, black deaths in custody, green corridors, asylum seekers. We can add heart to all of these big issues simply by participating and being the good neighbour. We will find the courage to speak out and to speak up for the vulnerable members of our community. And I always felt that the real measure of a community is how we treat its most vulnerable. So I think that's what the Green offers, the opportunity to look at realistically the most vulnerable members of our community. So to the beautiful and blessed Sunshine Coast, from Mooloolaba to the gorgeous Mount Coolum, I offer sincere intention, a very big loud voice, a willingness to make mistakes, a willingness to listen, and the courage to say, I haven't got a bloody clue, but I'll ask someone who knows. And with the endorsement of the Greens, a heartfelt desire to participate in the evolution and advancement of my community. So here's to the greening of our earth. Thank you.
True heart indeed. And our last candidate is from Nicklin. Experience, knowledge and ability rolled into one, John Law.
Finished? Yes, I'm John Law, and I'm the man with a plan to win Nicklin. It's a simple plan. I'm going to take my vote from 6% to 66%. See, this is serious. What is it I'm passionate about? Look here. Equal representation. Men and women. Yeah. Australian parliaments are misogynistically full of men.
Yes.
And if you look at that statement made by the Liberal National Party candidate for Cairns when he said women who are intoxicated deserve to be raped, that is an absolute disgrace. And I've written to him, we've got a rather verbal stoush going. Violence against women in this society is absolutely shocking. I spent some time in Coda Park, and there was a 30-year-old woman there with a 7-year-old little girl, and she was homeless. And she was homeless because her husband had raped and beaten her. In Victoria, she packed the car that night and just left with virtually nothing. And she was homeless because of the violence of her husband. And she was telling me what she did to survive. She got tourist brochures and maps to look like she was a tourist, not a homeless person. Because she said, if I look homeless, people look down on me. If I look like a tourist, I can stay in libraries and places like that without getting asked to move on. Now, in a society as rich as ours, and a society that is supposed to be as caring as ours, for a woman to suffer that is just disgraceful. Just disgraceful. Now, that man told me he'd withdrawn his statement. Withdrawing your statement doesn't mean you've changed your mind. It just means that you've been caught out, saying something that you think's wrong and might cost you the election. He never apologised. So, more women in Parliament means that women get across the fact that men cause violence. They just do. And men out there, I say to you, never ever say she asked for it, because no woman asks for that. On the lighter side, my candidate here, fellow member, once said to me, "You dress like Tony Abbott." Now, I've known Sue for 5 years. We go out for dinner regularly. And I said, "Sue, I am the candidate for the Greens for Midland." And she said, "I'm the candidate for Budrum." I thought Sue was the biggest right-winger going. Does that not show the diversity that is in the Greens? Now, I want to finish on a quote, because Sue quoted Mahatma Gandhi. I want to quote Kermit the Frog. It's great to be green.
And for a final...
No?
Oh, well. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. And to Larissa Waters and Adam Stone, who travelled so far, and to all of our fantastic candidates, please give a big hand and have a cup of tea.